write a script, and this is a question for me more than anybody else, but I think it's good for everybody. Whose voice do you hear before you cast an actor?
I try to hear the voice of the character rather than an actor. To write for a particular actor, unless you know they're going to be part of your project
Right,
from the beginning,
right,
and that
right.
never happens except in television. Um, it's sheer folly because you're only going to be disappointed because of scheduling or money or budget or whatever reasons. You're not going to get your first choice of actor. Um, so I'd much rather hear the voice of the character. But that said, the most exciting thing in the world of filmmaking is to sit down in a casting session and have an actor bring something to your words that
Oh,
you never anticipated.
totally, totally,
They come in, it's one thing for them to nail it. It's another thing to make it their own. And that's thrilling. It's
totally,
so exciting.
totally. I'll tell you, one of the great thrills in my life was I wrote a show, a television show, and it aired sometime after. And I was sitting at home, and as the show went on, I was mouthing the words that the actor was speaking and thinking, oh my God, I wrote those words. It was a feel,
Oh,
I've never
yeah.
had that feel. It was like incredible, I was sitting with my
Well, my
wife.
first
Oh,
experience with that was on Amazing Stories. My first
yeah,
script ever produced was directed by Martin Scorsese. Now, I did a page one rewrite, so my name is not on the script, but I've got Sam Waterston and Helen Shaver, and they're all
damn.
doing lines that I wrote, and it's my first time. I'm
Oh,
33 years old, and Steven Spielberg's the producer, and Martin Scorsese's the director, and it's like, holy shit! How did I get this lucky? This
exactly,
is never going to happen
exactly.
again.
Yeah, and for me, I was just trying to show off to my wife, who was also watching. I was like, oh yeah, now he's going to say this, and she's going to say that. It was like, it's a wonderful thing. It's really a great thing. Um,
Yeah.
so we talk. You are. We'll talk more about directing and writing, which of course you've done, but you've also acted, and
Well, I'd put quotes around
well,
that.
I looked at a resume of you, and it's yeah, it says actor bit parts, So like I'm not Laurence Olivier. I'm just throwing you some bit parts here.
No,
Yeah,
no.
but so I'm going to ask you this one way, and then I'm going to ask you the reverse of it. Okay. So as
Okay.
as as an actor, and also as a writer, are you continually rewriting a script? I'm not an actor, and anytime I've acted, it's been embarrassing for everybody. So I'm not. But are you rewriting the script? Because I was, thinking, no, he should have said this and that would have. So how does that work with you as an actor? Do you disassociate everything and just become Mick the actor? But the director and the writer
Well,
have to be in
you
there.
try. I'm not an actor, and nothing I've ever done is more than a handful of lines
Okay.
long. I actually just went to a screening on Saturday of a film that I have a cameo in, where I've got a line in it, and it's like it's just embarrassing. So, having a SAG card doesn't make me an
You're
actor.
right.
It only allows me to vote in the awards.
Right.
Uh,
And also to get good insurance, health insurance.
yes, well, no, I don't have enough of a SAG card to get that.
Oh, okay.
But no, if I'm acting for somebody else, if I'm acting in one of my own films, it's because we're on location and we ran out of real actors.
Okay.
Um, but if I'm acting for somebody else, I love that because I'm in their hands. I do whatever they want me to do. Um, you know, a real actor brings as much of themselves into the part as possible. So you're not playing a part, you're being a
Yeah.
part. You're being a character rather than taking one on and putting on a costume. But no, I do not tinker with lines unless I'm encouraged to do that.
So,
But
is encouraged a euphemism for getting paid?
yeah, well, there's
Okay.
that,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So
But
let me ask you.
most of my cameos have not been paid
Right.
for.
Right. You're a writer, and you're talking to your director. What's your thought? Say
Well,
and reverse. Yeah.
if I'm the writer, I'm usually the director, but not always the
Oh.
case.
Okay.
Um, but I have had that experience. I encourage actors to say words that are comfortable in their mouths as long as it doesn't impact the other actors' lines that come before an actor after, and as long as it doesn't impact on the storytelling. I did have an experience, and it was working with Peter McIntosh. There was an actor on The Stand, which was a huge miniseries and remains the highest rated miniseries in American television. And Stephen King not only wrote the book, but he wrote the script. So we're on a set, and it's a very complicated scene with a lot of dialogue. Steve likes to write lots of words for his actors and in the books. And so this actor came in and said, "Here's my rewrite," and handed me a sheaf of handwritten pages. And it's like, I'm going to be shooting with you for 5 months. So this is our first scene together. How am I going? This is a lesson for writing and directing experience. And it was a big one for me that I had not faced before that. So, first of all, making the point that, look, you are rewriting the most successful writer in the history of books. So that's one thing. The other thing is a lot of what you've done here impacts the other actor in this scene and the direction that it takes. It also impacts scenes that come before and after. So let's sit down. I basically put it back the way it was, I almost said him or her, but I'll leave it at the actor, a handful of changes that were superficial and did not affect anything else of import, so that that actor felt happy, and I knew I could cut things that did not work right if they didn't, but I felt I was in pretty good shape. So I like an actor to feel comfortable and motivated and like they're being listened to and that they're important to the process, but they have to know that it impacts everything around them. And in a lot of cases, actors like to think of themselves as the sun around which all other planets rotate. And
the exact definition of talent. We all know that. We're going to leave that alone for today. You know,
exactly.
Let me talk a little bit about directing with you.
Yeah.
Most times, if you're directing any project, whether it's television or film, whatever it happens to be, you go through a pretty long pre-production period where you're breaking down scripts and you're breaking down scenes and you're looking this and looking that and so on and so on. You get to the point where you're now going to start first picture Monday, you know. What are you thinking as a director? You're about to go into a big project. It could have, I don't know, 40, 60 shooting days. I don't know, depending on how big the picture is.
Right.
What are you thinking?
Well,
besides being scared out of your mind because the studio is going to call you and break your balls. But other than that,
yes.
What's on your mind?
Basically, it's how can I best amplify the emotional content of every scene. Every weekend, I would sit down and shot list. I only would do storyboards if it's a stunt sequence or an effect sequence or where everybody has to be on the same page. The shots are not going to change, and it's in stone or pretty close to it.
Okay.
If it doesn't have those requirements, I will shot list the next week's work each weekend. So I will put it all down for the department heads to see. I will not just put general shot lists, whether it's going to be a crane, is it going to be a camera move, what sizes, how much coverage I need, but what special equipment I might need, that sort of thing. But I also will write up the emotional content of the scene so that everybody, all the department heads are on the same page that, oh, this is what we're going for. This is the color the room should be. These are the items that can heighten that. These lenses will amplify the emotional content of what we're doing. The director of photography and I will work very closely in that regard. But I'm also prioritizing. And something like The Stand, which was a 100-day shoot. I mean, I was away from home for a full year on that shoot. So you need to have a game plan or it's just going to snow you under. And thank God for Peter McIntosh, who was our line producer and just amazing second unit director. Really, really, I had no idea. I'd only done stuff of a small scale before that. And that was, 600 extras in Las Vegas, downtown Las Vegas, 100 shooting days, 6 states, 126 speaking roles.
Damn.
It was massive.
Wow.
But you prioritize because every day starts at a walk and ends at a sprint. You feel like you've got plenty of time to get your work in the day. Something happens, a camera breaks, an actor has a problem with how the scene is playing, they're forgetting their lines. And if you've got a scene with a dozen actors, one of them starts going up on their lines, they all start going up on their lines, and it becomes laughter and all that. So the end of the day, you're running to get the best that you can before the day runs out and you have to move to your next location tomorrow. So it's prioritizing. This needs to be done with care and with a suitable number of setups. This could be played in a moving master if it had to. Um, it's not part of a tension building scene. It's not part of an extreme emotion scene that, you want to give yourself time for heavy emotional scenes. And a lot of what I've done, even in the horror genre, there have been very emotional and tearful sequences between the performers. One that comes to mind is the Shining miniseries, where we have a whole 8-minute act where it's Steven Weber and Rebecca De Mornay basically on a couch in front of a fireplace. And it's one of my favorite scenes I've ever shot. And it's haunting and fascinating and emotionally deep. And so I knew I've got to spend all day on this scene, and the other scenes could be just a couple of shots. So it's really prioritizing what the storytelling is.
Talk to me about gear. In other words, as a director, and you mentioned that, of course, the DP is hired to shoot, and he or she or they will let you know what they want. How much do you feel as a director you need to know about cameras and lenses and all these kinds of things, lighting and so forth?
The more you know, the better a filmmaker you
Yeah.
are. Now, there's no way you're going to know it all when you start. I knew next to nothing my first job as a director on Fuzzbucket. I didn't know lens choices, um, and I didn't know that much about the technical aspects of it. But that's why you have department heads who you try and get the best people you can. I'm not the best director of photography around. I want to hire the best director of photography I can find. Same with production designers, same with actors, all of those things. Hire people you can trust and whom you can learn from. And the more you do it and the more you know about all these technical choices, the better your communication level is with the people you're working with, whom the people you're working. You can be able to say, okay, I want to use a 10 millimeter lens here because I want to see the universe. I want to see the world. And then I want to put the camera down on the floor on a floor dolly with a mirror so I can get all the way down on the floor when we're dollying, and you can turn the floor into a foreground with a big wide lens and see the world and create a disturbing point of view that sets an emotional tone as well. So the more that you know about the tools of filmmaking, the better a filmmaker you are.
Logical, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
You and your wife are going to pay money, especially you live in Los Angeles, so you're going to pay a lot of money to go see a movie. What makes you want to go see a movie? What is it that you say, I want to see it? I'm not talking about your friend or your brother said, let's come and watch a movie. What is it you say, I'd really like, or your wife says, I'd really like to see this film. What is that thing that makes you want to see it? What are you interested in looking at and reacting with?
Well, I want to see a story well told. I want to see a comedy. I want to make me laugh. My life has been devoted to one primary genre. It doesn't mean that's the only thing I love.
Yeah,
I
of course
love
not.
all kinds of movies, but when you have success in a particular genre, particularly a gutter genre like the horror genre, that's all you get to do. But having done my podcast for 7 years as well, it's in the horror genre. So I'm dying to see somebody with a fresh, original vision to telling a scary story.
Mm.
So I love that. But basically, I just want a good movie, something that takes me someplace that I don't know every step of the path I'm going to be taking. You know, this just yesterday we went to see Ethan Cohen's new movie because I love the Cohen brothers,
I
and
do too.
it
About women
just
in Australia, was that it? Is that new movie he's got?
it's called Drive Away
Drive
Dolls.
Away
It's
Dolls, but it's about,
yeah, it's set in they're in New York, but they go to Florida, to Sarasota.
oh, okay. I read about it,
Yeah.
Drive Away Dolls. I just read about it recently in one of the trade magazines.
Yeah, it just came out Friday.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And you thought,
but
what'd you think?
I was disappointed, frankly. I think maybe Joel and Ethan need each other.
I think that being disappointed with someone that you respect and like is a good thing. Because I
Yeah,
think if you're doing experimental work, quote unquote experimental, not all of it is going to work. And the Coen brothers are pretty experimental, I think. Uh,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And this was something that was sort of like a Cohen brothers, but much more broad
Hmm.
and much more sexually oriented. And it goes a mile a minute, and it's only 83 minutes long.
Mm,
But I would see anything the Cohen brothers do, separately or together. Um,
I would too.
but yeah, they definitely talk about a cinematic personality, even though it's a shared one between brothers. They have a very distinctive one. And they came up with Sam Raimi. They worked on each other's films back in their youth. And Sam and the Coens both developed really highly original cinematic styles where the camera is a character.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think the same thing about Quentin Tarantino. You know, you see a Quentin Tarantino movie, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, like you said it before. You
Completely.
watch 1 minute and you go, oh, I know who directed this movie and who wrote this movie probably.
Absolutely. And he was our final guest on the podcast before I wrapped it up. And
Ah,
I'd been trying to get him for years. And, for film school or film students especially, that podcast, we've got over 180 interviews, 250 shows,
damn.
and it's interviews with filmmakers by a filmmaker. So it's a very unique and valuable resource that's available. It's called Postmortem.
Yeah. I
Mick
saw
Garris.
I saw a show the other day, and I don't know where it was on or whatever. It was a discussion between Bradley Cooper and Emma Stone, and
Ah,
it was actor to actor. You know what? The thing was great.
there.
It was really good. I mean, they really talked about, in LA, and this is nothing against LA because I've worked there most of my life. In LA, you're a movie star. In New York, you're an actor.
Right.
You know what I mean? You were. And this was two craftspeople, whatever, talking
Two of the
about,
best.
yeah,
Two of
and
the
yeah, and talking about their craft in a way that it wasn't superficial, it was real. She said, well, I worked a long time on this film and you did too, but you did more producing. It was lovely to hear people whose lives were that, discussing honestly and openly what they thought. It was refreshing, actually.
Yeah, it's great to hear an interview with people where one of them is not just a podcaster or a journalist or a fan,
Yeah,
but people who do the same job together.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
we've had John Carpenter, Toby Hooper, Stephen King, Clive Barker,
Damn.
Guillermo del Toro, Quentin, James Wan. We've had all these people, and they open up in ways that I've never heard them open up before because of the circumstances, talking filmmaker to filmmaker.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it. And I think, especially, as a teacher here in school, I really put so much emphasis on being in the arena. If you're a mathematician, you can do whatever you do. But if you really want to know this business, you can't read about it or go to college about it or do anything about it. You need to, buckle up, get a job as an intern for $20 a week if someone likes you, and then be a PA,
Yeah.
and then whatever else you want to do. But you need to be in the arena to understand what goes on, because most of it is below the surface.
Yeah, it's not entirely about the construction, the writing and constructing of a film, because now everybody has the tools to make a good quality movie
Right.
on their phone and their laptops and their iPads and the like. Things that I didn't have, you could only shoot on film, and it was not post synchronous sound, anything like that. I had my little 8 millimeter movie camera as a graduation present, and I made little movies, and I learned from that. Now you can make Steven Soderbergh makes movies on his iPhone that look just as good as anything in the theater.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. So, Mick, let me ask you, I'm going to ask you to comment on 3 things. Okay?
Okay.
All right. No, they're fine. They're fine. The first one is Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Why do you know why I ask you about Jimi Hendrix? Because when you were a
Yeah.
young guy, you interviewed the great Jimi Hendrix, who was godlike
I
to
was
us.
I started out as a music journalist for the San Diego Door, which is the same paper that Cameron Crowe wrote for, the guy
Oh,
who directed Almost Famous,
yeah.
wrote and directed that, which is about that era and that life. Um, Very aloof, not particularly conversational. It only lasted a few minutes, and very dismissive, but I don't think it was a an intentionally negative thing. I think he was shy, and I think he had his mind on other stuff, and he just wasn't interested in the trappings of show business.
Yeah, in those days, and I say I'm 5 years older than you are, those guys were godlike. Janis Joplin, I know you did something with Janis, and Jimi
Yeah.
Hendrix. So just to be a young person and be there and asking questions and interacting with these people was really thrilling. I had it with Janis Joplin. I've never met or seen. I mean, I've seen him perform, but Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, I interviewed Janice as well, and she was very drunk at the
Yeah,
time.
she was
And
very drunk when I interviewed her too,
yeah,
and it wasn't the same day. So
yeah.
we can take that as an experience. Yeah, yeah,
Well, it's interesting because I've always been interested in how people I admire do what they do and what motivates them. So that started when I was, in high school. I interviewed Ray Bradbury and Rod Serling, who created the Twilight Zone. And I've always been fascinated, and I somehow found access to be able to get to these people and talk to them. And then it continued back in the late 70s, early 80s when I did an interview show for the Z Channel, which was the first pay TV channel in Los Angeles.
hmm,
And then, despite having a career as a filmmaker, went back to it for the postmortem TV show and then for the podcast that we just wrapped it up. But all of the interviews are available. But it was 7 years of doing it.
wow,
Certainly not to make a living, but because
right.
I learned from every one of those
Oh
interviews.
yeah, absolutely. You spoke about 2 giants to me anyway, Rod Serling and Ray Bradbury. Uh,
My gods.
so,
Yeah.
of everybody's. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember when Twilight Zone came, and nobody had ever seen anything like Twilight Zone or heard, it was phenomenal. And those
And
guys,
he wasn't a genre writer at that time. He had written um, what's the heavyweight, the Anthony Quinn boxing movie. Um,
oh yeah,
uh,
oh
but
shoot,
he was a dramatist, and he was a short story writer who was not into scary stories. And he came up with the Twilight Zone as allegory. And it just happened to hit the ground running, just ran on 8 cylinders, and it's just something really special that every anthology show since owes a great debt to.
right. I remember when that came on, and we would gather around to watch that. It was really important to us to see that stuff, not thinking
Yeah.
anything about where we'd be or what business we'd be in. We loved this stuff because it
Yeah,
just spurred
exactly.
creativity. It was just like wow. Every episode was wow, wow, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was definitely appointment television.
for sure, for sure. The next thing I'm going to ask you may go back a little further, but
Uh-oh.
uh, it's not a Marx Brothers movie, but let me ask you about the horse feathers.
Well, that was about concurrent with Jimmy and Janice. Horse Feathers was a band that I was in. I was the lead singer in a band. It was a progressive rock band with a sense of humor. We wrote all of our own material. Started out doing a couple of country rock type tunes, but the longer we stayed together, and we were together for over 7 years,
Wow.
um, we just got more and more interested in complicating our music and just not in a masturbating way, but just in a way that was much more interesting than three chord progressions and the like. And everybody played several instruments. I was the lead singer and could play claw piano and strum a few chords on the guitar. I was not an instrumentalist, but everyone else was.
Uh,
And 50 years after we broke up, or after we were together, we actually took a bunch of our best demos from the 70s and cleaned them up and added overdubs of some vocals and instrumentation and put out a CD.
oh,
And
that's great.
it's actually on Apple Music and Spotify. It's called Symphony for a Million Mice by Horse Feathers.
Oh, that's totally great. Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was really fun. We opened for the Kinks and we opened for a number of recording acts, but our stuff was original, so we couldn't play bars and dance places because our stuff, well, we were a show band, and it
That's
was
great.
very theatrical. Who knew that it
Yeah.
was kind of cinematic music
I think
before
music
I
is
knew.
really important, cinematically, because it really tells another level of story. I am a,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm a musician, sort of. I play clawhammer banjo, which is mountain music banjo, and I play classical piano. So you can't get any more
Wow.
disparate than that. Yeah, I know.
Oh,
That's when
nice.
I saw, because you said, well, I can play some, and when I read, yeah, I can play some chords on the guitar, and I can even play some chords on the piano. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know, but I know how that feels. That's like,
Well, my wife, when I was away doing the stand for a year, she had been a bass player and singer and songwriter in a new wave band.
mm,
And she gave up that and started studying classical piano while I was away.
oh yeah,
And then she wrote modern classical piano pieces and
damn.
is a brilliant musician. Yeah.
Wow, wow. Yeah, I love the piano. Piano is just it's a machine that can make any noise you want it to make.
Yeah.
And it's unlimited, whereas playing a simple instrument, I'm not degrading a banjo at all. It took me 10 years to figure out how to play that thing. But but the piano is just incredible, and I think of it totally cinematically. It's really wonderful.
Oh, it's a fantastic instrument.
I think we're good. Anything else you want to tell me before I open up to my students?
Oh no, let's get the
Good.
questions.
James, come on, man. I know you want to ask this question.
Yeah.
Come on, James.
Cool. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of yours. Was really like a Stephen
Thank
King
you.
reader when I was like younger, like probably a little bit too early. And then I started watching like the adaptations, like The Shining and The Stand, and I like saw your name and stuff like that. I was like, okay, Mick Harris or whatever. And then when Masters of Horror came out, I didn't watch it when it was airing, but um, I was just became a really big fan. Like bought all of them like on DVD and stuff like that. And
Thank
so
you.
I never really noticed until reading more about it. So the 13th episode of the first season, Imprint, Showtime decided to pull it, not air it. So given like your quote on it and that New York Times article saying it's like one of the most disturbing films you've ever seen, do you think that was an appropriate decision? And then also, what was your reaction to when like the studio, when the network informed you, and like what was Mike's reaction to that as well?
Okay, well, Showtime only put up about 10% of the budget of the show. So they didn't have any rights to have creative control over it. It was funded by Anchor Bay, the DVD company at that time. They gave us a set of 5 rules not to break, no murdering children, no, whatever they were, I don't remember, but there were things you would never do. No male frontal nudity was one of them, which was ridiculous. But we didn't break any of those 5 issues. And they said just the overall intensity is too much for us. We're not going to air it because of that. And we thought, fair enough. It's their network. They can do that. And we thought it would be a bonanza for us because think of all the DVDs we would sell, the show that Showtime would not air. Well, at the time, Walmart was the biggest seller of DVDs in the country. They sold 40% of all DVDs sold in the US. They found out about it, and so they wouldn't carry it. So there was a huge percentage of our DVD sales that we lost there. But it also proved the purity of what the show was meant to be. I was able to say to the filmmakers, this is your film. You make it the way you want to make it. Nobody's ever had a show like that before where there were no rules. As long as you could do it on time and on budget, not break any of these 5 rules, then full speed ahead. And we did it. We fulfilled that promise to all those filmmakers, except in this case, because they chose not to do it. I don't know. It wasn't Mick Garris's Masters of Horror. It was not meant to please me. It was meant to satisfy filmmakers who were frustrated about having dealt with the studio system or the network system that forbade them from creating what they wanted to create on their own. So, I have mixed feelings about it because, yeah, it was intense, even too strong for me in some ways, but I will defend till the end the right for the filmmaker to make that film.
Yeah, me too.
And it should have been, there were warnings at the beginning of every episode on Showtime. So that should have been enough, but I'm lucky that I didn't have to make that decision. Although if I did have to make that decision, it would have been that they air it. But that's why I'm a producer and director and not a programmer.
Right. That's why you don't take screenwriting classes, because you're not an executive. So
That's right.
does anybody have anything for Mick before I let him go? Anybody?
I know it always takes a while for the first questions to pop up.
Everybody's good? Nobody? Okay. Here's your opportunity. Okay. Mick, we're done.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure. Great to see you, and
Me too.
hopefully see you when you're out here.
You will. You will. I'll catch up with you. Thank you,
Right.
man. Okay, we're good,
Perfect.
everybody.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Take
Mick.
care.
Take care.